Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister Podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister Podcast. I am your host, Keith Crockford, and today I am chatting with David Slater. Hello, David.
Hi, Keith.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Now, David sent me a message a couple of weeks ago, sort of saying that he had a bit of an interesting story, and would I be interested in having a chat with him on the podcast? And I was aware of David's story because I've been following him on Facebook. So I thought, what a great opportunity to bring him on and for him to explain to everyone. Now, David is one of our bucket listers. He has already done Mount Toopcow with us in 2022. And then you've got Mira Peak booked with us and Aconcagua booked with us as well for the forthcoming years as well. So, how did you find Toopcow to start with, David?
You know, I loved it. It was what I class as my first proper mountain. You do the mountains of the UK and they are mountains, but this was a proper epic adventure. And I think from the day that we landed down in Marrakesh, you kind of you got a feel of excitement, even though you got a spare day or so in Marrakesh and stuff to explore, and it was great. But yeah, Toopcow was brilliant, and we had the great Dave Blower with us. And you know what? He's such a funny guy just to hang out with and just share some of his stories, and he's got some right stories as well. And then I was quite lucky that we had quite a small group as well, so it was really good fun.
Yeah, Dave certainly got a lot of stories. You generally struggle to shut him up and for him to stop telling his stories, which is great. And everybody loves Dave, and we love Dave as well. In fact, I was chatting to Dave last night because I saw him last night, and he happened to tell me that he'd been and bought himself a motorbike. I think, Dave hasn't had a midlife crisis because Dave is now 70. I think he's onto his second life crisis now. But Dave now has bought the leathers, he's bought a motorbike, and he's got himself a Triumph 675, and he's going to be hitting the road. He's going to be hitting the roads on that. So fair play to Dave. I think that was a bucket list item that he wanted to tick off. So yeah, I said, "How are you going to get your duffel bag up to the airport on the back of your bike?" And he kind of hasn't worked that one out yet. So Toopcow, you really enjoyed it. I think Toopcow is such a great trip, and it's one that I think a lot of people start their journey on with us. In terms of, it's a 4,000 meter peak. A lot of people, like you say, have done the mountains in the UK, but nothing kind of really prepares you in the UK for the altitude of hitting above 4,000 meters. And then you then decided to take it up a level, and you've booked another couple of trips. What sort of drew you into those trips?
I've always been drawn to the Himalayas anyway. I've always wanted to go to the Himalayas. It's always just been a childhood ambition from an early age when I started climbing at 13. So I think with Mira Peak, I was juggling between Mira Peak or Amadablam. And for me, Mira Peak, I don't know, just something about the draw to Mira Peak just took me there more than Amadablam. I know Amadablam is a lot more technical and you could learn a lot more from that, but Mira Peak, I think it would be a case if you'd share that with more like-minded people that are looking to just upgrade and go, to the next one and so on and so on. Whereas Amadablam, it's a bit more technical, and you might get a lot more sort of advanced climbers that go to that one. That's just my view anyway. So, it was a natural progression, really. So, yeah, Mira Peak, I'm really looking forward to that. And it's not actually that not long away now. Actually, once we get to Christmas, it's kind of almost on us.
Yeah, and I think that's with Mira Peak, it's still classed as a trekking peak, whereas you're increasing your skill level, or you need an increased skill level before you would look at something like Amadablam. Mira Peak is a true proper style expedition, but I think Amadabalam just takes it up that next level, really. So I think you've made the right choice there for your first one. And then what I really wanted to chat with you about today is kind of your challenge for 2023, because when in 2022 did you decide to sort of take on this challenge?
November. I remember it really well. I decided that I just wanted to do something really big for 2023. And, I've been quite an active sort of fit guy. I thought, right, it's got to be something around that, something that I can benefit from as well. And I bounced it off a couple of friends, and they all thought I was raving mad. It's like, no, you can't do that. How can you put your body through that? What? It was just daft. And then I talked to, I don't know if you've heard of a group of guys called Three Dads Walking.
No.
So they've walked the UK, and they're really interesting guys to get to know. And I got talking to one of those, a guy called Andy from Three Dads Walking, and I talked to him about it, and he was like, go for it, really do. Yeah, it'd be really great to do that. And I did. So that challenge was to start on the 1st of January this year to run 10K every day for the whole of 2023. And as of today, we have 60 runs left to do till the end of the year. And it's been an amazing journey. Didn't start off the best, to be fair, because 10 days in, I ended up with shin splints. Never had that in my life ever. And anyone asks me about it who's not had it and tries to explain what it's like, all I could ever say was it's like having toothache in your bones.
Yeah.
It was just not nice. And it took a good 3 weeks to get rid of those. And the only medical advice is to rest, which wasn't an option. So it's compression socks, which I've never had ever in my life, and I don't like them, and they make you look a little bit odd. No offense to anyone out there that likes compression socks. Just weren't for me. And a weird exercise that I did every evening to try and just help me get through it. And 3 weeks later, by the end of January, I was through it. And then I remember one February evening, I think it was February the 12th off the top of my head, in Yorkshire, we got hit by some sleet and snow. And I went running in the evening thinking, what am I doing? That sleet and snow just got everywhere. I had 3 layers on and I was drenched by the time I got back and frozen. And I thought, what am I doing? But you know what? I still got up the next day, went off and did it. And I've not looked back since and just enjoyed it. And it's just been such an amazing adventure. It really has.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's not like I can, you set the challenge of every day. And it's not like you set a distance challenge where you could go, I'll make that up later on. You kind of have to go out every day.
Correct. And there's been 3 days in this whole journey where I've kind of had to really rely on mental resilience to do the 10K as opposed to fitness. When you just one day was just a long day at work and ferrying around the children as you'd end up being with taxi dad. And I think I ended up running at 10:30 at night. And that was a real push to actually kind of really get myself out. And then a couple of the days, which were just, days with books and things like that. But yeah, there's been honestly just 3 days. The rest of it I've thoroughly enjoyed. And it has been an adventure. People look at it and think, oh, it's 10K you're running, but it has been an adventure because it's taken me all over the place. In the summer months, I ran up Snowdon. And I started off and it was summer at the bottom and it might as well have been winter at the top. It was horrendous that day at the top. People would just run into the cafe because it was just not a nice sight at the top. It was just very grim and dark, cold, raining. And this is the middle of summer. But anyone that's ever been up Snowdon knows that it can change so quick up there. So that was a really good day. Actually, I enjoyed that. I had a couple of days down in Snowdonia, and I went and did join one of the park runs as well, which was great fun. They were very welcoming. We also had a run. I spent a bit of time up in Scotland. Ran up in the Galloway Hills, ran up Merrick, which is the biggest one around there. Interesting fact for you on that one. It's in the UK. I'm not sure if it's in Europe or if it's just UK, but it's got the longest sight of distance from peak to peak, which is Snowdon and Merrick. They can see each other from the peaks.
Okay.
Which is a weird fact. And you wouldn't think that, bear in mind there's so much distance and there's a lake district between them, but you can see it.
Yeah.
It's a weird fact.
One thing that I'm interested in is obviously, they always say, and there's different figures that they use for it. But if you do something every day, it becomes a habit. And I know there's talk of you need to do it for 30 days, you need to do it for 60 days. And once you get to that point, it then, that repetition then just becomes a habit and it becomes the norm at that point. For you, when did it feel like the habit had kicked in, that actually this is just something that I do every day? And I think it's really interesting from a training perspective for either people going to the gym or people starting running or people stopping doing something. Like, when for you did you actually ever feel that switch in terms of I'm having to force myself to then it becoming this is just the norm now?
Yeah, it's so true. It does happen. I'd say when we got to March and you kind of got past some of the worst of the weather that comes around sort of January, February time, certainly in Yorkshire anyway, and you kind of start getting towards those lighter evenings. There was a switch then where you kind of thought, I'm back enjoying my running again. Not that I wasn't ever enjoying it, but as you ask any runner, they go through phases where they're running because they need to, because they're trying to get fit or they're training for something. And then you get to that point where you're really enjoying it. And yeah, for me, that was probably as we got into March. It just then became very habitual and I started finding routines as well. So I started finding colleagues at work were more interested in joining me for a lunchtime run. It's funny that no one wants to join you in the worst months. And then it just, I think because then I'd started posting these selfies on the Instagrams account and things like that, the social media, and it kind of gathered a little bit of momentum. People were reaching out saying, I'll come run with you as well. So at that point, you kind of think, right, this is great because, you're getting people to join you now as well. And it just became part of the norm. And now when I joke to people about this, saying, what are you going to do when you get to the 1st of January? And you're like, that is a really good question because this has been part of my life for a year now, every day, 10K. And you kind of think, yeah. And I think, in all honesty, I was talking to someone literally yesterday about this, one of the guys from one of the charities that I'm running for. And I ran with him yesterday lunch. And I think the plan now is to run right up to the day before we leave to go to Mirror Peak.
Well, it's interesting because obviously, do you know what the world's longest consecutive amount of days run for is?
I don't off the top of my head, but I know there's a lady in the States that's got well over something like 1,500 or something.
Well, the longest,
I don't know what it is exactly.
The longest actually is 19,032 days.
Wow.
And that was by Ron Hill, the creator of the ever famous running leggings.
Yes.
He ran every day for 52 years in 39 days in the end. Obviously, that wasn't 10K a day, but he actually ran for every day for that amount of time. So I knew it was a long time, but I did that before the call. I did have to have a quick look and research it to see because
I didn't realise it was that much. I mean, hats off. I thought the lady that was doing well in the States that had run 1,500 consecutive, I thought that was pretty phenomenal. But I mean, how would you even record all that? Because surely Strava and things like that didn't exist back then as well.
Well, he just ran every day, didn't he? He just knew that he had to get out and go. And I think I think for part of it, he'd even come out of surgery or something. He'd even gone out and done just a jog just to say that he had run on those days. I remember reading years ago. But obviously some of those days might have just been a 2K jog around the park, and some of them.
But it counts.
But it all counts. So maybe you've got a record there. You've got 52 years to beat there, David, before you can.
Well, I think at the ripe old age of 45, if I get another 50 odd years of running out of me, I'm going to be doing well.
Very well, I think. And in terms of, was this a fitness challenge? Was it? Did you decide to do it to raise money in the first instance, or was the raising money because of just the fact I'm doing this challenge, so therefore I might as well raise some money while I'm going for it? Who are you raising the money for?
Yeah, it was definitely the latter. I always knew that if I was going to do this, it was going to be for charity because it was such a big thing. And I kind of thought, these days you've got to do something fairly big for any charities to get noticed because there are so many worthy charities out there in the world. And there's always somebody doing something for them. But you've got to do something, I think, off the scale to be able to get noticed a little bit. And doing 10K every day for the year and then just trying to raise £10,000, it all kind of fitted in together with it being 10K and 10K. And yeah, it's just it's just grown and grown and grown through the year, and it's people have taken a lot more notice of the two charities that I'm running for. So the first charity I'm running for is a charity called Candlelighters. So they're a Yorkshire-based charity, and they're a children's cancer charity. But they pump a lot of their raised funds back into research. So that, albeit they're a Yorkshire-based charity, the whole of the world benefits from the research that's conducted, because ultimately, it's about trying to find cures, but also to help prevent the ailments that come with treatment as well for the young people. So, and they're a charity that I've looked and worked with for the last 5 years or so, and I'm about to actually next year become an ambassador for them as well. So, it's a really good charity, and it's one that's close to my heart. With a really good friend of mine, his daughter passed away 9 years ago, 2 Fridays ago, from childhood cancer. So that one was a natural progression really for me. The other charity is Papyrus, who are probably more known nationally as well. So they're a charity aimed at prevention of young suicide. And again, they're amazing charity what they do. They have a helpline there, 365, 24/7. And they've been amazing. And yeah, both charities for me are very worthy causes. But there are many other charities out there that are very worthy as well. They're the two that I chose, and they were chosen because they had some sort of meaning in my life with things that had happened, like I say, with my friend's passing of his daughter, and then a friend of mine 20 plus years ago who took his own life. So both just amazing charities. The people that are at these charities are amazing. I've met so many of the people now along the times. One of the guys was running me yesterday for one of the charities, and just amazing people to talk to. And I know it might sound a bit of a somber point to talk about them, but they're just amazing, the work they do. They really are. It's all about prevention and cure. It's, that's what their sole aim is. And I'm proud to run for both of those charities.
And how is the fundraising coming on at the minute?
It's picked up recently, actually, because I was on radio a couple of weeks ago, and then we've had a few stories printed in the local press. BBC have got interested in the event, so they're going to come and film the last run on the 31st down in Leeds. So they're going to come down and film that, and that'll be really good fun. And it's just gathered a lot of momentum with its reach as well. It's this sounds really daft, but there's a movie director in America following it. He's just a keen runner, come across the story, he follows it, comments on it. It's just really amazing that the wonderful world of social media can reach so far, because I'm not a social media buff by any means. I'm really not. I like to have a conversation. I prefer, talking to people rather than everything being social media, but it serves a purpose, and the reach that it can get compared to just bumping into people in the street is really, really great. So I've had to utilize that. I've had to get used to posting selfies, because I'm not really, I'm not into all that sort of stuff, but I've got used to it over the year. And long may it continue, because it's great. I mean, there's a selfie that I got on Tuchel at the top, and there's myself and Ibrahim, I think he was called, one of the guys that we had. 2 guys, Mohammed and Ibrahim, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's me and Ibrahim posed at the top, just underneath the triangle. And that was probably one of my first selfies that I thought, actually, that's a really good selfie. I quite like that selfie. And I think I used it on my Facebook for a few months. And it just made me think, the world of selfies is, it's there. Embrace it.
Yeah. And, it's one of the things that, running the podcast, running the business, like, it is all about promotion, and you've kind of just got to get over that at some point of yourself and realize that, the podcast is great because no one ever sees my face. I do think I've got a face for radio rather than TV.
Snap.
But that's, you've kind of got to just get used to how, I remember when I did my first podcast and listened back to it, it was always like, oh my God, that sounds awful. But you kind of get to that moment where you realize that everybody else hears your voice. You're the only one that hears your voice in your head the way you do. Everybody else, you sound the same to everybody else in the world. It's only Correct. You. And it took me a while to kind of get used to that. And it's the same with watching yourself back on videos and things like that. So you just kind of need to forget about it now, I think. Obviously,
I totally agree with you.
How do you feel about, obviously, a lot of people say, you shouldn't run every day. You need to, even runners have a rest day, to give their bodies chance to rest. Or, they might go out and just do a very light couple of K run but you've kind of done 10K every day. Do you think it's had an impact on your body? Do you think, if you had injuries, obviously apart from the shin splints, and I have had shin splints, I know what that's like. It's not very nice at all. And it stopped me running for quite a while. So for you to run through that is pretty amazing. But how has your body coped with the challenge?
I think my body's fine. I've been surprised myself, actually, because I thought, at the ripe old age of 45, I'm going to pick up injuries naturally. Your body's just, as much as you want to push it, your body's not what it used to be 20 years ago. But it's been fine, touch wood. Literally, the only injury I've had is the shin splints. I've not had a pulled muscle, not had a tweak. It was a couple of weeks ago, I picked up this bug that seemed to be flying around the whole of the UK, like everybody else has had. And it lingered for a little while. And then, that kind of played a part in some of my runs where the times, which I'm not fussed about the times anyway, it's just about getting the runs done. And that impacted a little bit. But no, you know what? My body's held up. And like I said right at the start, I've probably felt as fit as I have for the last 20 years, which is quite remarkable, really, because I generally thought I've got to be prepared at some point that I'm going to pick up some sort of injury. I've prepared that I might have to use, ice baths or, heat treatment, or maybe I got in touch with a local physio and had them on standby in case I needed their services during the course of the year. I joined a gym as well, thinking, right, if I do get anything, I can maybe just at least go inside on the treadmill if I pick up colds and things like that. But I've not used the gym, not used a physio, not had any ice baths, not had anything. And it's been great. And I think part of that is I've mixed up my 10Ks. They've not all been the same routes. They've not been road. They've not been trails. It's been a mixture. So a big chunk of them through summer were actually in the Lake District. Because I've been juggling this year with doing the run. I've also been training for my ML qualification.
Yeah.
So I've got my assessment next week in the lakes Monday to Friday. So I'll be coinciding that with finding 10K routes as well. And I think mixing it up and doing different routes, hilly ones, flat ones, trail ones, road ones, has probably really helped, because I read a lot in December about muscle memory and how your body can just become conditioned to just doing something, just one thing. And that's when you can pick up fatigue and injuries, because your body's just doing that one thing. And as soon as you change it, that's when the injury starts. So I think because I've mixed it up right from the start and done road, trail, and it's not always been 10K. I think the most distance I've done is 20K, and that was in the lakes, and that was because I took a wrong turn. I wasn't meant to be in Langdale, I was meant to be in Grasmere, and I took a wrong turn, which is not very great if you're about to do ML, because that doesn't prove that my nav's very good. Yeah. So the irony in that was just daft. But I took it in and I thought, you know what, I actually enjoy Langdale. So I ran through Langdale up Elterwater and over the tops and dropped back into Grasmere, and it ended up being 20K. And that didn't bother me, because again, it's just about changing it. And I think if you do that, then you kind of look after yourself naturally, and your body looks after you as well. So it might sound daft to some people, and I'm sure there's some runners out there that are probably a bit skeptical about it. But for me, it's worked. And I think as long as you find what works for you, that's all that matters. And
have you found that, obviously, you were a runner before, but has it become easier now? Do you feel, obviously, if you're saying you're fitter, like, how are your times now? Are you ready for a PB now because you've done all this training? Or
it's funny you say that. So I've just done last two Sundays, I've done organised events. So there's one called the Leeds Abbey Dash and one called the Wistow, which is between York and sort of Leeds. And I got 46.35 at the Leeds one a couple of Sundays ago. And then Sunday just gone, I got 45.23. I was happy this year floating around 55 minutes. So you could argue that as the year's gone on, yeah, I've definitely smashed my times. I'm never going to get near my PB. My PB was back when I was in my early 20s, and I did a 37.35. That was a very flat 10K. And it was a road one, when I enjoyed roads a little bit more than I do these days. I prefer trails these days. I think naturally as you get older, you just don't like the roads. It's just that hard pounding on your knees. So you like the trails and the mixture. And I know Dave, I was talking to Dave actually when we did Tubcal, because the day after we submitted Tubcal and got back down to Imlil, and the day before we were going to be transferred then obviously back to Marrakesh, I actually went running through the valleys. And everyone thought I was nuts. We'd just come off Tubcal, a massive trek, basically a 16-hour day, and I decided to go for a run. But I knew it's because if I didn't run, my joints would seize up a couple of days later, and that would be when I'd then be driving back from Stansted back up to Yorkshire. So I knew I had to kind of find a way to combat that. So I went for a run, but everyone thought I was nuts, but I enjoyed it. I got to see some scenery around Imlil and the valley and stuff that I wouldn't have ordinarily seen. So yeah.
Yeah, I've jogged down a couple of times from the refuge down to Imlil, and it's quite nice.
It's great.
Stretch the legs on the way back down. I did it with Dave once, and we had a couple of bucket listers that joined us, and it was, it was really nice just to be able to stretch those legs and come down a different way. And I think actually it's sometimes better for your legs to get them moving, because when you've just climbed up and then you've got to sometimes walk slower than you want to on the way back down.
Yes,
and actually do more damage to your muscles than what actually you do good. So, how are you feeling now in preparation for Mira Peak next year then with this challenge? Like, not that we're saying that everybody should start a crazy challenge like this if you're training for it, but obviously increasing your cardio will certainly help you at altitude. But how are you feeling ready?
Can't wait for it. I really can't. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I'm going to enjoy Christmas and enjoy the rest of this challenge and see it out. And then whatever I choose to do between January and April it's up to me, really. It's not a challenge, but I think I will continue running. It makes no sense to stop, because all I'm going to do is undo the hard work that I've done through the year. And you know what? I want to tackle Mira Peak in the right sort of, right frame of mind and be physically fit as well to enjoy it, because you've got to enjoy it as well whilst you're there. And I think, the cardio is certainly going to help me with that. And, the only thing I need to probably worry about is the altitude. But I didn't suffer on Toubkal at all. And I saw a couple of people suffer. So,
I think, like we said earlier, like, it is become a daily habit for you now. So actually, it's probably harder to break that daily habit than it is to continue the habit, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think... come the 1st of January, I'll be continuing the running, that's for sure.
It just doesn't necessarily have to be 10K every day, does it? I suppose that's the key thing to it.
No, not at all.
Where can people find out about your challenge? Where can people follow you? Where can people donate if they want to donate to the charities?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just having a little coughing fit there. Sorry about that. So there's a website set up, which is wandadrunning.co.uk. That has all the links, and it has a little bit of the backstories around why we're doing it as well. And then we have Instagram, which has got the bios in there, which again is wandadrunning. That's got all the links. And again, with the bio, it tells you a little bit about what we're doing and why we do it. And it has the daily selfies there as well, which we post every day of the run that we've done, who I've run it with, and just a little sort of scribe about what the day was like or anything like that. So it's available to everyone to be able to get to. And we appreciate all the follows and the comments and kind messages that people have sent us over the last year. So it's been good.
Perfect. And obviously, one thing, before we conclude the podcast, and obviously you've already got a few things on your bucket list booked, but what else is on the bucket list of Dave?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure, actually. Mira Peak, Aconcagua. I'm talking with a gentleman at the moment who's looking at, I don't know if you're familiar with what the Yorkshire Three Peaks is.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman I'm talking to. We're looking at doing continuous back-to-back 3 peaks over a 24-hour period. See how many times we can get through it.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and then there's another gentleman that's looking at doing the Welsh 3000s, but doing it twice. Might join him to do that as well. But I think next year it'll be about my own personal goals that I want to achieve as well. So Mira, Aconcagua, and see where we go from there.
Perfect. Well, David, thanks ever so much for coming on to the Bucket Lister podcast today. It's been lovely chatting with you and hearing your story, hearing your reasons why, and hearing about the challenge itself. Obviously, if anyone wants to follow David, I will put links into the show notes of the podcast so you can click through, follow, and see him finish the challenge from when we're recording this one, 60 days time. But good luck on Mira Peak next year. Hope you have an amazing time. And I will be back with another episode of the Bucket Lister Podcast next week. So until then, goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister Podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.